Alright, so we have a gig today where I'm going to need to pare down my normal kit and take a micro kit with me and pare down my normal cymbal array for a bunch of reasons, including the tightness of the performance space and difficulty of getting loaded in. So I thought that would be a good opportunity to start to talk about cymbal array and the prioritization of different cymbals and some things you might look for when you're trying to build your own cymbal array. My normal gigging cymbal array is fairly extensive, but in my view really contains one of each of different distinct kinds of voices that I like to have available to me, and not a whole lot of redundancy, just a little bit. So let's start with, without doing too much talking about the specific cymbals I've chosen. If you only have one cymbal at your disposal, you pretty much have to have your hi-hats, in my opinion. If you're playing any kind of traditional patterns, that's what you're hitting the most often. If you didn't have that under your foot, if you didn't have that at your hands, you'd be making a constant mental adjustment, which can be fine, but you need to have your eyes open about that. So I'm using just a standard set of B20 alloy hats. I think any kind of typical B20 alloy hats will be nice and crisp and do the job and sound right. These ones happen to have sizzles on the bottom, which is a nice sort of extra bonus feature if I want to make use of that. So the next thing that you need, if you only have two cymbals, is you need a good crashable ride. It could be labeled as a crash ride, or it could just be a ride that has a crashable edge. And so with a ride cymbal, of course, you're looking for it to have really three jobs, three tools. It's got a riding surface, it's got a bell, and then it's got the edge. And most ride cymbals are not actually very good on the edge. They don't crash well. This, I love the Sabian Omnis. I think they are the best crashable ride on the market. And this is a 19-inch Sabian Omni. HHX Omni. So if I only had two cymbals, I would definitely pick this one or one like it. But what you're really looking for is that extra third dimension, that third tool of the crashable edge, means that you really can do, at that point, between the hats and a good crash ride, you've got basically everything you need to have covered. And you could do the gig, I could do the gig with just these and not make too much adjustment and be able to play what I wanted. So if I had one more, I would defer to some kind of middle of the road crash. So for me, crash cymbals fit into kind of three classes, and then they have different dimensions of how dry or wet or thin they are within those classes. But I would be picking, so the three classes I perceive are an accent crash, which is one that has a very precipitous, quick decay. It's a hit it and quit it kind of cymbal, a crash cymbal that you could hit 2 times in a row and have it recover very quickly to have that second strike also have presence. So an accent crash, and on the other end of the spectrum, a finishing crash. So the kind of crash where you come around, you've done your big roundhouse fill, and you hit this thing, and it should have a long, smooth, majestic kind of character to it, a nice, long crash. So already, I'm going to dismiss the need for a finishing crash because I've got this, and this does that job. So I don't need to have a second one in this particular setup. What I will be looking for is between the accent crash and the finishing crash is the realm of sort of the 16-inch crash, where it's got some of the character of a finishing crash. It's a good accent, or excuse me, it's got some of the character of an accent crash. It's good for little fills to punctuate, but it does have a slightly longer tail, a slightly longer decay, and a smoothness to it where it also feels right, doing something that's longer. But I don't need it to necessarily have any ride characteristics. I don't need it to have a left-hand ride or anything like that. So the next one I'll put on is this. This is a 16-inch Sabian Vault Fierce Crash. It's kind of oddly hammered, but it's got a nice, smooth character, very thin. And so if that's just giving me a nice counterpoint to this, and also something where I don't have to make that adjustment of every kit I play has got something for me to hit directly in front of me, something that's near the hi-hat. Now I've got that covered. So the next thing that I would add, if I've got one more place, is I would go back to the idea of an accent crash. And here, what I'm really going to do is go to a very large splash. I love these 10-inch AAX Sabian Omni, or excuse me, Ozone splashes. They have, as you can see, sort of a Swiss cheese pattern, which makes them kind of dry and trashy, but at the same time, they've got a nice sort of middle distance between a kissy kind of splash and a accent crash. So I get kind of a 2-for-1. And so that's good in a limited array like this. I've got a 2-for-1 here with this crash ride. I've got a 2-for-1 here with this splash that can also be my accent crash. Okay, now if I've got one more slot, the next thing that I personally want is a China. China is a really important voice in my way of thinking musically, and so I want to have those ideas at my disposal if available. China, and so I would pick an 18-inch China probably, because one of the ideas that I like to employ with a China is using mallets, and it's just my experience that, you know, under mallets, an 18 is really the way to go. This will also serve as an alternative sort of finisher for me off on the right-hand side. I'm turning this one lip up just because of the stand that I have at my disposal in this micro kit rig. I'm a very light player as far as my stick. I don't break cymbals, and so I favor things that are thin, and I also favor having the lip up on a China in this position, just because I can also have a little bit of access to the bell and to the surface, and I don't need to worry about it flipping over or tilting. Just it'll rest easy, and I'll get all the voices out of it. Finally, if I had one more slot, and today that's all I have, and if I have access, so in this case, the reason I have one more slot is I have access to an extender. So the one voice for me, the next priority voice that's missing for me is a kissy kind of splash. A very high, light, quick splash. And so this is the one place where I actually favor B8 alloy over B20 alloy. These Sabian 6-inch B8 splashes, I love them. They're tight and quick and sounds perfect. So now I've got this to complement this and this. So hopefully that all fits in a pretty light cymbal bag, and this kit actually fits in just a couple of bags, and I think I can actually take it in one trip. Let me give you a quick taste of it just for the heck of it, because you stuck around this long, so I appreciate that. And then I'll put a link to the actual performance that we do. It's going to be at a college radio station, and they're going to be streaming it live audio, but then also posting it later on the college YouTube page. So, without further ado,